Every profitable trader you've ever admired has one thing in common, and it's not what you think. It's not a secret indicator. It's not a mentor who showed them the truth. It's that their trading on any given day looks almost embarrassingly uneventful. If you watched over their shoulder expecting drama, you'd be disappointed within about 4 minutes. 95% of retail traders are, right now, searching for a way to make consistency exciting. They want the discipline of a professional and the adrenaline of a gambler packaged together, and they will never find it, because those two things cancel each other out. Today I'm going to show you why the trait that actually produces long-term profitability is the same trait most people quit trading to avoid: boredom. You've probably had a stretch where your trading actually worked. A few weeks, maybe a couple of months, where the account grew steadily and nothing went wrong. And if you're honest with yourself, you probably remember feeling something close to restless during that stretch. Not stressed, not excited. Restless, like something was missing. That feeling is worth examining, because it's usually the moment right before people sabotage a working system. It's not a lack of knowledge. It's not a lack of a good strategy. Most traders who blow up their consistent periods already had something that worked. The problem isn't the system. The problem is that the system stopped feeling like enough, and boredom got mistaken for a signal that something needed to change. Let me introduce you to two traders who both found something that worked and did very different things with it. Marcus spent 4 years building what he called his edge stack, a swing trading system based on earnings momentum that, when he finally backtested it properly, showed a real, repeatable statistical advantage. For 3 months, he traded it exactly as designed. Small position sizes, a handful of trades a week. Modest, unremarkable green days mixed with modest, unremarkable red ones. His account grew about 11% over that quarter. By month 4, Marcus was bored out of his mind. 11% over 3 months felt slow compared to the accounts he saw posted online, the ones showing 40% in a week off some biotech spike. He told himself his system was working, but not working fast enough, which is a sentence that should set off alarms in anyone who hears it, because a system that works doesn't have a speed problem. It has a patience problem in the person running it. So Marcus started adding to it. He added a second, more aggressive strategy for extra opportunities on days when his main system had nothing. He started sizing up on trades that felt more confident, ignoring his own position sizing rules because the rules felt too conservative for how sure he was. Within 6 weeks, he had, without ever making one dramatic decision, quietly dismantled the exact system that had been working, replacing it piece by piece with impulse dressed up as an upgrade. He gave back the entire quarter's gains in 11 days. What's striking about Marcus's unraveling is how reasonable each individual step felt while he was taking it. He didn't wake up one morning and decide to abandon discipline. He made a series of small, defensible-sounding adjustments, each one justified by a specific trade that seemed to prove the original system was leaving money on the table. That's the trap. A system rarely gets destroyed in one moment of obvious recklessness. It gets destroyed one reasonable-sounding exception at a time, until the exceptions have quietly become the entire strategy. Karen was a former hospital scheduler who came to trading late, in her 40s. With no finance background, and by her own admission, very little interest in markets as an intellectual subject. She found a simple trend-following system, tested it over 2 years of historical data, and adopted it with what can only be described as stubborn indifference to how it felt. Her account grew about the same 11% over that same quarter Marcus traded. Karen was also bored. She has said so directly, on record, more than once. But her response to that boredom wasn't to touch the system. It was to notice the boredom, name it out loud, sometimes literally saying to herself, "This is supposed to be boring," and then go do something else with her afternoon. She took up gardening that same year. Partly, she says, because trading stopped giving her anything to do once her 3 daily checks were finished. Her account, 4 years later, has compounded into a number Marcus is still nowhere near, because Karen never gave boredom a vote in how she traded. What Karen understood, whether she could have articulated it in these exact terms or not, is that the boredom wasn't a message about her trading system at all. It was a message about her own unmet need for stimulation, arriving through the only channel that happened to be open that afternoon. She didn't try to answer that message inside her trading account. She answered it somewhere else entirely, which meant her trading account never had to absorb the cost of satisfying it. Same starting system, same statistical edge, same quarter, same feeling of restlessness showing up right on schedule. Marcus and Karen didn't diverge because one of them was more talented. They diverged because one of them treated boredom as information that something was wrong, and the other treated it as confirmation that something was finally right. Let's break down why boredom does this to almost everyone, and why the traders who last have all, in one way or another, made peace with it. The first force at work is what we can call the excitement-reward confusion. Somewhere in the wiring of a trader's brain, excitement gets mistaken for progress. A big, dramatic winning trade produces a rush that feels like validation. Proof you're good at this. A quiet, small, planned winning trade produces almost no emotional signal at all. Both trades might contribute the same amount to your account. Only one of them feels like it did. The 95% chase the feeling of progress rather than actual progress, because the feeling is what their brain has learned to associate with success. The 5% have decoupled the two entirely. They've learned to trust the account balance over the adrenaline, because the account balance doesn't lie to them the way their nervous system does. The second force is what you could call the sophistication trap. A simple system executed the same way every day doesn't feel like it reflects the amount of work you've put into learning this craft. You read the books, took the courses, studied the charts for years. Surely the payoff should look more complicated than 4 rules on a sticky note. Complexity feels earned. Simplicity feels almost insulting to the effort behind it. The 95% keep adding to their system because a simple system doesn't match their self-image as someone who has put in the work. The 5% have made peace with an uncomfortable fact. Markets don't compensate you for effort. They compensate you for edge, and edge is very often simpler than the person holding it wants to admit. The third force is variable reward conditioning, and this one is almost identical to what happens inside a casino. When your wins come at unpredictable intervals and unpredictable sizes, your brain releases dopamine not just on the win, but in anticipation of the next uncertain outcome. Consistent, planned, similarly sized wins don't trigger this the same way. They're too predictable to hijack the reward system the way a surprise does. The 95%, often without realizing it, are chasing the unpredictability itself, because their brain has been trained to crave the uncertainty as much as the payout. The 5% have deliberately engineered predictability into their process. Same position size, same entry criteria, same exit rules. Specifically because predictability starves that craving instead of feeding it. The fourth force is comparison contamination. Social media has made it trivially easy to see someone else's best week, stripped of every boring week that surrounded it. When Marcus compares his real 11% quarter to a stranger's screenshotted 40% week, he's not comparing two trading systems. He's comparing an entire unglamorous process to a single highlight reel with no context. The 95% measure themselves against highlights. The 5% either avoid this comparison entirely or have built enough perspective to know that the account posting 40% in a week is very often the same account posting negative 60% a month later, just without a screenshot of that part. There's a reason this particular distortion is so hard to shake. A highlight reel isn't lying exactly. The 40% week genuinely happened. What it leaves out is everything surrounding it. The account that got blown up 8 months earlier, the 3 other attempts that never made it onto anyone's feed, the sizing that made that week possible also being the sizing that will eventually end the account. You're not comparing your process to theirs. You're comparing your entire visible history to a single frame someone chose specifically because it was the best one they had. The fifth force, and the deepest one, is what we might call identity starvation. Somewhere along the way, many traders started needing trading to be interesting because trading had become one of the more interesting parts of their life. If your job is repetitive, if your days feel flat, trading can quietly become the place where you go to feel something. That's a completely understandable human need. It is also a catastrophic thing to outsource to your trading account. The 95% ask their trading to entertain them because nothing else in their routine is doing that job. The 5% have found other places for that need: hobbies, relationships, competition, creativity, and they've stopped asking their P&L to be the most interesting part of their day. It's worth being specific about how this shows up, because it rarely announces itself directly. Nobody sits down and consciously thinks, I need my trading account to make my life feel meaningful today. Instead, it shows up as a vague dissatisfaction with a perfectly fine trading day, a nagging sense that surely there's something more you should be doing, some trade you should be taking, some risk you should be adding. That dissatisfaction almost never has anything to do with the actual trade in front of you. It has everything to do with what the rest of the day looks like once the market closes. Stack these 5 forces together, and you get a fairly complete picture of why boredom is so dangerous for otherwise capable traders. Excitement gets mistaken for progress. Simplicity feels unearned. Unpredictability gets craved for its own sake. Comparison strips away context, and an unmet need for meaning gets routed straight into an account that was never built to provide it. None of these forces requires you to be undisciplined in any general sense. They can all be operating on someone who is disciplined in every other area of their life, which is exactly why so many otherwise careful, competent people fall into this pattern without seeing it coming. So what actually changes this? Not motivation, not another article about trusting the process. Concrete shifts that make boredom survivable long enough for consistency to compound. Shift 1. Measure yourself in process compliance, not excitement. At the end of each trading day, instead of asking, did anything interesting happen, ask, did I follow my rules? Give yourself a simple score. This retrains what you're actually optimizing for, because you start collecting evidence of a different kind of win, one your nervous system eventually learns to recognize as success, even without the rush. Shift 2. Separate your need for stimulation from your trading account entirely, on purpose, in advance. Karen took up gardening not by accident, but as a direct response to noticing that trading used to be where her extra mental energy went. Find something, a hobby, a sport, a project, that has nothing to do with markets, and treat it as mandatory maintenance for your trading discipline, not an unrelated leisure activity. Shift 3. Build a no-touch period into every system you run. Decide, before you start, that you will not modify your rules for a fixed stretch of time. A full quarter, minimum, regardless of how the results feel along the way. Most systems that get abandoned during a normal, expected losing streak that the trader mistook for proof the system stopped working. A no-touch period protects the system from you. Shift 4. Curate your inputs aggressively. Unfollow the accounts posting only their best trades. Mute the group chats built around screenshots. This isn't about jealousy, it's about accurate information. A feed built entirely from survivorship bias will make your honest, ordinary results feel like failure, even when they're exactly what a sustainable process is supposed to look like. Shift 5. Replace the word boring with the word working in your internal vocabulary. This sounds almost too simple to matter, but language shapes emotional response more than people expect. Every time you catch yourself thinking, this is so boring, consciously restate it as, this is working correctly. You're not lying to yourself. You're correcting a mislabeled sensation. Shift 6. Track your best and worst quarters side by side. Honestly, over a full year. Most traders discover, when they actually do this, that their calmest, most uneventful quarters were also their most profitable ones, and their most exciting quarters, full of big wins and big losses, were flat or negative overall. Seeing this in your own numbers, not someone else's, is often the only proof stubborn enough to overcome the pull toward excitement. Do this exercise properly and resist the urge to explain away the results. It's tempting, when the data confirms that your quietest quarter was your best one, to tell yourself that quarter was somehow lucky, or that conditions were unusually favorable, or that it doesn't really count. That explaining away instinct is the same instinct that got Marcus into trouble in the first place. The data is not asking for your interpretation. It's simply reporting what happened, and what happened, for almost every trader who runs this comparison honestly, is that boring one. All 6 of these shifts share something in common. None of them make trading more fun. That's not an accident, and it's not a failure of the approach. It's the entire point. You are not trying to make the boring parts of trading exciting. You are trying to make peace with the fact that they will never be, and building a life sturdy enough around that fact that you don't need trading to fill the gap. It's also worth being honest about the cost of these shifts, because pretending they're free would be its own kind of dishonesty. A no-touch period means sitting through a losing stretch you're fairly sure you could improve if you just let yourself tinker. Curating your inputs means giving up the temporary comfort of feeling connected to a community built around highlight reels. Measuring process compliance instead of excitement means some of your best executed days will feel like nothing happened at all, with no reward for the part of you that wanted today to matter. Every one of these costs is smaller than the cost of what happened to Marcus's account, but they don't feel smaller in the moment, which is exactly why so few traders pay them voluntarily. This is where the deeper shift happens, and it's bigger than any rule on a checklist. The traders who actually achieve consistency stop asking, how do I make this more engaging, and start asking, how do I make this disappear into the background of a life that's engaging somewhere else? When trading stops being the main character in your story, it finally gets to do its actual job, which is compounding quietly while you're paying attention to something else. When you stop needing trading to be your source of meaning and start treating it as one disciplined habit among several, the excitement problem solves itself because you've stopped asking it to solve a problem it was never built to solve. Marcus needed trading to feel like it mattered as much as the years he'd spent learning it. Karen needed trading to leave her enough time and energy to garden. Only one of those needs is compatible with long-term consistency. Here's the part of this video that's supposed to feel like an anticlimax, because it is one. If you strip away every myth about trading, the lifestyle content, the screenshots, the countdown clocks on courses promising to change your life in 90 days, what's left underneath is a discipline that rewards people who can tolerate repetition better than almost any other skill rewards repetition. Professional traders at real institutions describe their days, when they're honest, in language closer to accounting than adventure. Check the plan, execute the plan, log the results. Repeat tomorrow. If your trading feels like an adventure most days, that's not a sign you've mastered it. That's usually a sign your position sizes are too large, your entries are too loose, or your rules are too vague to actually constrain your behavior the way rules are supposed to. Adventure, in this specific context, is almost always a symptom of risk that hasn't been controlled yet, not a badge of skill. This is worth sitting with for a moment, because it inverts almost everything the industry around trading tries to sell you. The courses, the signal groups, the influencers posting from rented cars in front of rented houses, all of it is built on the promise that trading can be thrilling and profitable at the same time, indefinitely, for years. It can be thrilling for a while, it can be profitable for a while. The overlap between those two states, sustained over a long career, is far smaller than the marketing suggests, and the traders who actually make it to year 10 are almost never the ones still describing their trading as thrilling. So go back to Marcus and Karen. 4 years down the line, Marcus has rebuilt his account twice since that quarter, both times chasing a version of trading that finally feels like it matches the effort he's put in. He's still searching for the system that will make discipline feel as good as a big win does. He hasn't found it because it doesn't exist. Karen's account has compounded steadily, boringly, for 4 straight years, alongside a garden that, by her own account, has gotten a lot more interesting than her trading ever did. Same market, same access to information, same statistical edge on day one. The only real difference between where they ended up is what each of them decided boredom meant. For one of them, it meant something was broken. For the other, it meant something was finally working, and working things don't need to be touched. The next time your trading feels flat, unremarkable, almost not worth mentioning to anyone, pay attention to that feeling because it's not a warning sign. It's the sound consistency actually makes. Most people spend years chasing a version of trading that feels alive without ever realizing that the version that actually pays them is the one that barely makes a sound at all. There's a strange kind of relief available on the other side of this realization once you actually let it land. If trading isn't supposed to feel exciting, you're released from the exhausting job of making it feel that way. You stop needing every day to justify itself with a story worth telling. You stop needing the market to entertain you, the same way you don't need your morning commute to entertain you for it to successfully get you to work. It just has to work, and most days, working looks like nothing at all.